covering the Utes better than anyone else. This is Ute Insider Steve Bartle of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ PK. PK's back on Monday. He'll be back next week. Little last gasp summer vacation. We're joined right now by Steve Bartle. Steve, good morning.
Morning, DJ. How we doing, man?
We're doing well. I got a couple questions for you here. A little positivity, a little negativity. Where would you like to start? A little lift up, a little positivity, a little negativity, a little truth-telling. What do you think?
I'll let you tell me where to go.
We're going to start with a positivity, an affirmation in the morning. Are you ready?
I'm ready, sir.
Of what you know, and I know very limited access to the team at this point, of what you know, the position group that you believe should give Ute fans most help, that will bring them to their feet and have Rice-Eccles Stadium rocking, that position group is?
Wide receiver. Based on what we've seen, based on what we've heard, I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic, confident, excited if you're a Utah fan to see this group in action. I think there's a lot behind what Utah has, and Braden Pagan, who comes to Utah from Utah State, that familiarity with McGiven and the offense, I think, is just going to do a lot for him. And the chemistry that has seemingly developed with Devin Dampier, by all accounts, sounds like it's at a really good place. So I think Utah has the sort of go-to receiver in Pagan that can produce week in, week out. And then, as we've learned throughout the offseason, this is a group that has some depth. There have been some surprising guys that have developed and progressed this offseason. One in particular is Nate Johnson, who's been around the program now a few years. He's really kind of settled in to this wide receiver role, and he's helped kind of solidify the depth, give Utah another option in that room. So Utah is coming into this season feeling like they probably have 4 or 5 really solid receivers, and then the depth behind them where you can sprinkle in and have guys available for you to step up at different points throughout the season as well.
Alex is going to have to host the rest of the show because I just blacked out twice. I didn't hear most of your answer. The first time you said the strongest position was wide receiver, and I just went straight. I just faded to black. I didn't hear anything. And when I came to, you just said they're 4 or 5 deep at wide receiver, and I passed out again. That was an unexpected answer. I hope Ute fans handled that on the freeway better than I did, because that could be a dangerous situation. Wide receiver, the best. So you're grading on a curve in part because that's been, well, let's be honest, that's usually been the position group that's been least likely to bring the stadium to its feet.
Yeah, it's interesting with what Utah still has in place, at running back and at quarterback with Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin and Wayshawn Parker, in that running back room. I think the group that is just going to get this Utah fan base really excited is, like I said, the depth and ability in that wide receiver room. They have some guys that I think can really, I don't want to say shine, but I think this offense is going to shine a brighter light on that wide receiver room, some of the ability that they have in that group and the depth that they have in that group as well.
Well, you are echoing what Ron McBride said yesterday. He said he thought the key to that group, and he was right with you, he thought that there was unprecedented depth there, and he thought the key was bringing a new OC and bringing a position coach in, and they come from other schools. In the case of McGiven, he brought in players from his 2 previous schools, both San Jose State and Utah State, and he said they're known. There's relationships there. It's proven over time. They've practiced with these guys day in and day out and multiple games, and they know what they can do. There's no guessing. There's no suspecting. So, all right, I'm going to have to adjust and quit blacking out here. You and Mac are on the same page. I'm hearing the same stuff 2 days in a row. Perhaps I should trust 2 sources, right, Steve?
Perhaps you should, DJ. Perhaps you should.
All right. Let's go to the other side of the same coin. If I want to know the position group that's most likely to bring the place to its feet, now I want to know the position group that's most likely to have Ute fans putting their head in their hands. No, I
Yeah.
paid to watch this. What happened? Where's that most likely?
I think this entire offseason, the biggest question that I got, the most consistent question that I got was centered around the defensive tackle room, the defensive line, and stopping the run.
Yep.
And, Utah went into the transfer portal. They brought in 3 defensive tackles from the portal. 2 of them have a good quality playing experience coming from Wyoming and San Jose State. Another one from Tennessee who played at times throughout his career there. But a lot of the expectations, I think, for just what the standard is with that room and that group in particular, there's some uneasiness still around that group. And based on what we've been able to kind of take away from our viewing sessions, we just haven't been able to come away with a lot to provide any sort of valuable progress report on that group. And so, it's going into the season kind of blind and kind of uncertain. There's, and coaches and players have talked about that group has stepped up. And, there's some pieces in that room, some players in that room that garner a lot of optimism and confidence in their long-term projection, optimism around what they can be this season, but it's still going to require them to step up into roles and into playing at a certain level on a week-in, week-out basis that we just don't know where that's at with that group. So I think that is, like you said, if there's a group that could potentially bring this fan base to their knees at times, given how things went at the end of the season last year, I think that that defensive line group, specifically when we're talking about stopping the run, I think that's the big question mark and concern for Utah fans going into the season.
Of all the answers you've ever given me, Steve, I rate that the number 1 answer. All our conversations on the air and off the air. You hit so many key points that I want to underline and put exclamation points after, and I think you're very smart. And I've always said this, and Alex, I'm going to say this to you now that you're producing our show a million times. Whenever you meet somebody and then they talk and then someone looks at you and they go, that person's really smart, what they mean is they agree with me. I think so-and-so is really smart. That means whatever you were talking about, doesn't matter if it's football or banking, politics, I don't know, whatever. When they say, the person walks away, that person's really smart, that means you agree with me. That's all that means. It doesn't mean anything about IQ. And I agree with what you said, and I thought you had a key phrase. What the standard has been. Everybody's here spoiled. Everybody here is spoiled. You need 2 D tackles, you need 2 D ends, except you don't, because it's an exhausting position to play. You're getting hit and beat up on by 300-pounders, and you're sprinting all the way to the sideline. You're trying to sprint upfield 10 yards. You got to turn and sprint back 15, 20 yards the other way. It's exhausting, so you have to have a third player and be able to rotate. And you get hit so much, there are going to be injuries, so you have to have a 4th player at both positions, or the coaches are privately going in the room and like, what are we going to do? Because they're anticipating going 8 deep. And we all stood in front of Kyle Whittingham multiple years, and he said, we're 9 deep, we're 10 deep. One year he said, we're 12. I got 12 guys I can trust on the D-line. And that is unheard of. That is not normal. Coaching staffs all across the country are just biting their fingernails thinking, who's guy 6, 7, 8, and who's guy 9, 10, just in case we really have a bad run of luck. And you don't usually know. And it is usually a massive question mark when you get deep into D-lines. And it stresses coaches out big time. And the standard here is so high. It's like, of all the things Kyle Whittingham did well, that's one of the best. The D-line was nails. Rock solid year after year. Guys coming and going didn't matter. So, brilliant answer, Steve. Spot on. I mean, the wide receiver thing shocked me. I'm not going to kid you. But the D-line thing, that was straight money right there. That was brilliant.
I appreciate that, DJ. And look, like, to your point, you do need to have depth at the position, unlike you've had before. Mm-hmm. And what's making that difficult is everybody wants depth, and everybody is willing to pay a price to have that depth. And for Utah this year, They went in, like I said, they went into the portal. They brought in 3 guys that they feel pretty optimistic about, that they felt, coming to Utah could benefit from the development plan here, especially with Steve Saunders and this new, strength and conditioning program and how it sort of changed these guys physically. I think they're obviously counting on this young group and these transfers to come into the season. And, maybe they aren't playing at a really high level week one, right? But this is a group that with experience, I think, can progress, week after week, month after month, and that sort of thing, where by the end of the season, it's a much different, much improved group. And you're going into next off season feeling good about this group. But as of right now, the concern is just, where's this group right now? What is it going to look like week 1, week 2 when Arkansas comes to Rice-Eccles? That's the big concern right now.
It's a normal amount of stress. I think a lot of coaching staffs have this. Utah's just been immune to it for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of teams wondering, and a lot of teams, it'll be answered positively. They'll get to that depth, and guys will perform at a pretty good level, and it'll work out. But there's a lot of question marks at a lot of schools across the country. I just think that's normal at this point. And Utah's just back in a normal situation. They haven't, and it's a little uncomfortable because they've been in such a comfortable situation for so long because they've been beating the odds with their ability to recruit and develop. Yeah. I am also curious. Let's go to the other position groups. As we get a couple weeks into this, is there anybody emerging, a name people should remember at another position group like, whoa, watch out for this guy?
Yeah, a player that I've, in talking with him, I've had the opportunity to chat with him twice, and he's a transfer addition Utah brought in. That they actually recruited him originally out of high school a few years back. He ended up signing with Kentucky and then transferring to Akron. Cornerback Elijah Reed, I think is somebody that coming into this defensive secondary, Utah had the majority of this group pretty settled, right? With Jackson Benny, Nate Ritchie, Rabbit Evans, those guys in that safety room making that group. Scooby Davis at one outside corner spot, and then they had another guy in Rock Caldwell who they had penciled in that nickel spot. It was that other outside cornerback spot that was wide open. And so it was Elijah Reed, James Chenault, J.C. Hart really battling it out for that group. And, from what we've heard, we had the opportunity to speak with Reed, as a media group. He was really impressive. And I think he's the type that has the size at 6'2", 6'3". He's got long arms. He's in that mold of, the long corners that Utah's had in the past, the Keith McGills, the Sean Smith, those types of corners that really play that sticky press man coverage, but have that athleticism to still be, to still protect themselves vertically. And I think that is something that as I've done more and more homework on these players, I feel like Reed is perfectly suited to step into that exact role. And so I think Reed is someone that, he's off the radar a little bit, but I think he is absolutely someone that will, I don't know if he's locked in the starting role right now. I don't know. I can't say for certain, but I think he's going to be a pretty big contributor for Utah this season at that cornerback spot.
Last thing before I let you go. Fred Whittingham getting sued by the university. Reading through some of the stories, I came up with to the conclusion. There's a lot of stuff in there, but I think a lot of it is noise. I think the crux of the issue is that the university feels like they're owed about $400,000 due to the terms of, essentially the buyout for him to leave his deal with 13 months left on it. I don't know Fred's side of the story, and people don't tend to comment when there's pending litigation, so I don't know that we're going to hear his side of the story. But I thought that was the crux of it from what I read. And when either he cuts the check or Michigan Booster, whatever, however that's handled, then it goes away. It did make the point in the story that with the other assistants who moved, that's already been handled. So I don't know if Fred thinks there's something different, if there's some language in his contract or whatever. What's your understanding of that, where it stands, and how you think it's going to play out?
Yeah, that is my understanding of it all. I don't have a good sense of how it's going to play out, but as you pointed out, all of the other assistant coaches, went through that process and went the right way. They went.
Well, a lawyer somewhere had his phone cut off. He was about to cross the line. Maybe it was a judge. Just knocked him out right there. And that's it. We've heard enough of Bartle. All right. You don't have to get him back. I think we see where he was going with that. But thank him for us. There you go, Captain. All right, DJ and PK. Got to take a break right here. Coming up, 8 o'clock hour. Jason Christ will join us from Real Salt Lake. We'll hear more about Salon's contract. Got a big game coming up Tuesday in Denver with Leon in the League's Cup quarterfinals. Talk with Jason about that, the game on the weekend. We'll talk with Jason Christ at the top of the hour. Kevin Graham joins us at 8:30. Got some NFL preseason games going on. Time to start talking football with Kevin every week. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.